Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Here I am again. I don't have a very good background right there. I don't know if I should move them jugs or that old pink jug. I don't know that it matters. It's just for RV antifreeze, the other two oil jugs. I don't know how well that I'm being heard right here. I suppose I should do a test and then play it back and see. I got my fan blowing over here. I was going to turn it off, but it's too hot. So I got to leave my fan on. I'm underneath my umbrella. I got me an umbrella on my picnic table here so that I can be out here on my porch in the shade, and it works great. I got my little external microphone hooked on to my iPad here. Everything's good there. Oh, here it is. I was looking for my capo for my guitar. And I got my guitar right here. Oh, I can just barely pick this up. Oh, it weighs about 6 pounds or something. That's my gorgeous little Martin. Just gorgeous. I don't know if you can see inside of that or not. Probably not. It's, I think it says in there. No, it doesn't either. It just shows. But it says on the neck. It's a O-18. It's just one O. No 2O, no 3O. They make it in 0-18. They make it in 2 zeros-18. They make it in 3 zeros-18. And then they make it in M-something-18. And John Mayer's got one. And this is, actually got it by accident. I ordered 3 and off of Amazon, and they turned around and they sent me a O. And, but it's brand new, and I looked at it and studied it for a while, and I decided, well, with this ALS, it's a little lighter and a little smaller, and it's got fantastic tone quality. So I just went ahead and kept it. I could have made him take it back, but I didn't. And I'm not sorry. This is my lifetime dream. I also got a D35, and I might be putting on my neck straps here to help me hold this stuff. I don't know. But I got ALS Lou Gehrig MND. That's what they call it in England. And I'm losing strength fast. I won't be able to, my legs are doing okay yet. But I got what they call limb onset, and arms is man in a barrel. And I've been doing okay with my arms if I don't overdo them. If I don't try to lift too much. You know, I can't pick up a baby, for instance. If I could, but boy, I'm telling you, it's just like picking up 200 pounds. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating. It's just every grunt I got in me to get a little 15-pound baby up. And I can hold on to a steering wheel, no problem. Well, a steering wheel, they just turn easy, you know. And if I try to pick up, like I got a gallon of water here somewhere, I try to take my gallon of jug up there to take my drink of water. And it's difficult, very. If it's full, well, 8 pounds to a gallon, you know. And so I got about a quart in there now, so that's a relatively not too hard of a lift. But now what's happening here is I can't get the spoon to my mouth. See, I gotta dig in there, and I can't. My hand, it's like being spastic or something. And I gotta get that spoon to my mouth. You know, that's a hell of it. I'm making up the sounds now. When I get to the next level here, I won't be making up sounds like that. I'll be like that. That's when the bulbar muscles in the lungs and the face and neck and all that kick in. If I'm around that long, if I stay around that long. So here I am filming. You know, if you've been following me and you're following my website, you're thinking, boy, this guy and his stimulant discovery here is really hard on white people and European ancestry. And there's a reason for that. Several reasons is everything I say is the truth. There's nothing distorted or exaggerated. It sounds wild. It sounds crazy calling them people a bunch of murderers. You know, there they are over there with Queen Elizabeth now and Donald Trump and Comrade Melania. Just, you know, they got them red suits and them big black hat things, and there's royalty is just coming in the castles and all this greatness. And so we got that put up to be, you know, we think that that's the way it is. And we don't know that that's just pure insanity. And we don't know this British Stockholm syndrome that they took over on the white race first. You know, we Scotch, Irish, and in all the regional areas there. And the London, England, Queen's royal family became the ultimate because they were the most ruthless, the most rotten, horrible murderers this earth's ever seen. Killing men, women, and children. They killed our women and children and babies. See, they did to we white people the same thing they did to the American Indian, the same way they did in India and Africa and all over the world. They just went in and slaughtered and all that, you know, Alexander the Great and all their warring, killing monsters. And you know, they still got all their uniforms on there today. And then, of course, nobody knows that. We didn't learn this in school. We should have learned this in school. It should be fundamental. I'm gonna put my guitar away for a little bit here. It should be, but it isn't, because the teachers don't know it, and the professors don't know it, and the scientists don't know it. And until I made this discovery, nobody knew it. And now I'm the only one that knows it. And anybody listening here and following me just in the slightest, if you start to get onto this, all this royalty and all these mass murder and genocidal, I mean, they just went in and slaughtered North and South America, you know, Africa, India, Australia, you know, and countless, the Philippines, and they were way up into Russia and way up into China. And the territory was so vast in China and so vast in Russia, and that they had to back off just to some extent. But that's the only reason. You can only spread an army so thin, you know. And they got these murderous monsters on horseback and sailing ships all over the world and planting that flag and just going in and killing everybody. And then they bring in the missionaries and take their souls. And these people got to worship them and love them and honor them. They're the greatest thing in the world. Long live the king, and just nothing but genuine. And that's the Stockholm syndrome. That's the British Stockholm syndrome that we don't know we have. And there's nothing more real than what I'm saying right here. And it's my discovery, and it's the one I keep saying. This is a Nobel Prize winning. Now look at the cars out there once in a while. I got trucks and cars, and I think you can hear them maybe. I got this set up in a pan, and then I got this speaker here, so I think I'm doing pretty good vocally, even with my fan on, because I want to be heard. I want you to hear what I'm saying, and then if you listen, you know, everybody's so busy liking what they're doing here in America, the white people in particular that got control of everything and all the money and all the wealth and all the churches and the towns and the governments and, you know, small business, big business, you name it, they got it, you know. And Trump's their hero right now, you know, and even though there's a bunch of people standing up against him, he's got enormous backing. And now just today he's talking Theresa May, he's saying she's backing off Brexit and she's doing poorly. And I can't remember the other guy he's recommending, that one that quit. But when you look into that, what he's saying is she's not being tough enough. Theresa May is not being tough enough. She's trying to soft pedal this thing a little bit. But what it's all about is the Muslims are invading their countries over there because of the populations and the wars and everything, and all across Europe. And as a grouping, the European Union and NATO and all that stuff, they weren't able to shut down because it had to be the grouping's decision. Well, everybody's trying to be nice to everybody, see? They murdered everybody, and now they're over there murdering everybody again and more in all these different countries, and the population explosion plays into this big time. It's a determining factor. They could rule when there was 1 billion people on the planet Earth. Most of this tens of thousands of years of this, going back to the Roman Empire and Greece and Egypt, and even in the Americas, the Aztecs and the Maya. The stimulated man-made stimulants, the Aztecs and the Maya, the corn. Corn was a little slivery-looking thing, but it had them little nuggets on it, with full of enzymes and nutrients and fiber. But they started breeding it and hybriding it, and they come up with the corn on the cob, maize, and then the potato was the little nugget that was on the certain places around the bottoms of trees. If you knew how to find them, you could get a little bit in a pouch or something and eat them, and they were good, and had trace amounts of carbohydrate and hybrid those. And so the abundance of potatoes and the abundance of corn, it's the same thing we did in Europe with wheat and rice. And I always say wheat and how did I say that? Wheat and milk and juice and honey. Even milk, even fruit juice, even honey. It's all hybrid, man controlled, and we've taken the volume. There was no honey. The bees protected the honey. The bear might get some once in a while, and he paid dearly for doing it, and a few humans climbed them trees in certain situations, but nothing that amounted to anything. And then we tamed those honey. They're like cows and horses and dogs and cats that we domesticated. And we got the honey hives. And of course we have the honey hives to pollinate the wheat and the corn and the potatoes and all the rest of this hybrid fruits and vegetables. So it's a double whammy there. And just an enormous amount of pollination with the bees. And then you get the honey. So honey, just like sugar, it's the same thing, and wheat and flour, just like sugar, and none of it is in the natural diet in the world out there. So what I'm saying is that's what turned the Aztec and the Mayan into these blood sacrificing, enslaving monster people. And, we don't want to be so proud of the Aztecs and the Mayan. The Inca fall in there a whole bunch too. And in the same way with the Egyptians, just absolute monsters, killing babies. And if they heard there was going to be, as the story goes, and I don't doubt there's either all the way the truth or halfway the truth, they had been building those pyramids for hundreds of years as slaves. This is the Jews I'm talking about now. And somewhere along the line, I don't know if it's like 12 tribes of Israel or what it was, they got enslaved. And they got surrounded by these warring Egyptians. And the thing about these people that are high on stimulants is they got this extra ruthlessness and this extra strength and energy and power and lust and greed. And when they build those armies, boy, they just go on killing rampages like you can't believe. So they captured the Jews, and the Jews would have been like the American Indian. They weren't prepared for that kind of murder and stuff. They fought and killed and died just like the American Indian, but at a certain point they're killing all your women, children, and babies. You got to stop, because they're just going to keep it up. There's 20,000 of them with sword. In those days I don't think they had gunpowder yet, but just swords and horses and killing rampage. So that's how the whole world ended up being took over, and the British is the last of the the Roman Empire is still here in the form of the Catholic Church. They didn't just disappear, and it's said today they're the largest, powerfulest organization or grouping or whatever it is in the planet Earth, and I believe that. But they hide behind. See, everybody's slipping out of this deal, and the kings and the queens, and we got Princess Diana and who everybody adored, and then we got the new one now. I can't remember her name, Mary and Andrew or whichever one it is. These are innocent people. Even the kids, even the royal kids, they got them paintings up on the wall behind them, and they know the history. They know King Henry VIII murdered and chopped his wives' heads off and stuff. But everybody tries to separate themselves from that. And they send all their kids into these warring armies and stuff, and they got that British flag flying everywhere. You know, George Washington, I think, was out of that group. And I know he's held in high esteem, and in the Washington family, I think his ancestry. So this may seem kind of jumbled, and it is kind of jumbled. It's hard to explain when you're talking to people that don't have an inkling, not a clue what you're talking about. So what I'm trying to say again and again and over and over and over again is Columbus, for instance. Well, they had already been slaughtering the whole world, known world. They didn't know about these Americas, these two huge, enormous continents over this side, west, I guess they call it. They did not know that. I don't know if they still thought the world was flat then or not. But there was less than 1/4 of 1 billion people in the time of Columbus, and 20,000 men on horses, and then they had guns and gunpowder. And they just slaughter and everything. Of course, the kings and the queens, they got them building ships and shoes and cannons, and they're just sending these ships all over hell. And Spain and France, and those are all tied into the Catholic Church and the Roman Empire. And somehow, some way, the humanity's gone. They just plant that flag and it's theirs, and they kill everybody. They kill the men, and then kill the women and the children and the baby. They kill everything that breathes until there's no resistance at all. And then they, like I say, they put their missionaries in there and take the souls of whoever's left, and everybody answers to the king and the queen and you know, the Holy Bible and Christianity, and then the Muslims, they came in there somewhere and separated, but they got still the basic creation, I think, from the Old Testament. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not a historian or a theologian or any of that stuff. I have general knowledge of across the board, and it's all a bunch of bullshit. See, that's the same thing that turned them into these warring, killing monsters. Also had them in their greatness, see, their superiority. When you look at Queen Elizabeth, for Christ's sake, and Donald Trump over there right now, and Comrade Melania, and Theresa May, and that whole pile of shit, and all that royalty and all those castles, and you know, now those people over there protesting. They want the immigrants to be taken care of better, and the children not separated from the families, which is a terrible thing. Anybody knows that. Nobody's dealing with this 5 billion people that we added here just this last 70 years, 75 years. And then we jumped from that 250 million when Columbus landed here, so we went 4 times that to the first billion, which I think was around the middle 1800s, like before the Civil War or something. We finally got to 1 billion people on the planet Earth, and that was astronomical. That was 4 times the population the Earth had ever known. There was 4 times as many people. If you were to gather them all together, there was 250 million people on the planet Earth. And then by 1850, I'm just round numbering this, there was 4 times that many. So if you had 250 million, you'd have 4 groups of 250 million people from the whole, you know, counting all the people on the planet Earth, India, Africa, the Americas, and everywhere. Okay, now we jumped to 2.5 billion by the end of World War II. And that's another beyond description. Use the numbers any way you want to use them. And now since then we've added 5 billion people. That's 1,000 million people 5 times. So 1,000 million, 1,000 million, 1,000 million, 1,000 million, and another 1,000 million people. And so this migration thing and the planet Earth, this thing has just begun. And where to go with it now? The Brexit and Donald Trump and the American Christians here, which is the United States and Canada, but the United States is the leader. And And they're trying to shut all this back. And they don't realize that with that many added people, and there's another big monster in here, and that big monster, because Earthwise, you got the planet. They say you can put the whole 7.5 billion people in the state of Texas. I believe that. Okay, you got 7.5 billion people in the state of Texas. Now you got to feed them, and the clothes and the energy, and then they got to be able to spread their wings. They're like if they're a bird, they'd want to fly. So their children, they got to run around in circles and play, and you're not doing that with 7.5 billion people in the state of Texas. I'll tell you that. But we do have, even with that said, we do have. I just came back from Yellowstone Park, and across the United States, and we flew into Salt Lake, and Canada and Alaska, and there's vast amounts of territory here. But the lifestyles that everybody has come to is involved in the world marketing of food and shelter so our basic needs, we don't meet them like we did in the original village days, whether it was in Europe and Ireland or England or right whereas London, England today was just like the American Indian Plymouth Rock or something. And nothing. There were just people living there in London, England. I'm talking about now. And this is being an example across the whole world. We lived exactly the same as the Africans and the Aborigines and the American Indian. We were people living on the land. Some of us lived closer to the water. Some of us lived farther inland. Our groupings were sometimes, in just handfuls, and other times there was quite a few, way up into the hundreds of people, and in the region maybe thousands, and even as many as tens of thousands if you stretch out around far enough. And we would gather our food from the wild plant life and trees and bush and bugs and fish and birds, and just like the Indians, we had our way of making clothes and shelter, and depending on the region we lived in and how cold and how wet and how hot it might be, and some people living closer into the mountains, and so this scattering all across. Now, as it happens, these were all white people in that European region, and that goes back many thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of years, how those all took place. And the black people in Africa, and the brown-skinned American Indian, and the Asians, and all of these groupings, and somehow or another, like nature does perfection, whether it's frogs or eagles or the dog is domesticated, so he's like man. He's just kind of ended up where he ended up at, and that's what we've done. We ended up where we ended up at, but we were not back. I'll go back to London, England. So here we are in London, England. We were not a bunch of murdering monsters. The men would fight and skirmish, and the boys coming up and the girls and stuff, they wrestle and play, and chase each other, and they do all kinds of stuff, and sometimes they're fighting and hitting, taking, grabbing, and there's a certain amount of that in just in nature. You throw a half a dozen puppies or half a dozen wild wolf puppies and throw in a bone with a piece of meat on them. Boy, that battle's on. Who's going to get that bone and that meat? And that's all nature, and that's good. That's what nature built that into us, and just like the deer and every living creature. This competitiveness and in a good way. Now we're grouping animals, we humans, and but we did those skirmishes just like all the rest of the creatures, the bears and the rabbits and the wolves and the foxes and the eagles and the ducks. I mean, there's this competitiveness, the seagull, then whatever goes on in the ant life and insects, and it's all nature did all this in this millions and billions of years, and nobody knows how it came to be or where it came from, or no other creature asks that. They don't even, the eagle don't ask that, the deer don't ask that, No creature asked that. But we humans with these minds. And these stimulants is what created these minds. We learned how to make sugar. And we learned how to make corn syrup. We learned how to get these coffee beans and make coffee and caffeine. And we learned how to get the tea leaves and make tea. And then we learned how to make alcohol. And just massive amounts of all of these. And stimulants. And we became these warring monster killers, and just extreme, slaughtering everything and everybody until you get to London, England today. You know, and Moscow's up there trying to do what they're going to do to hold their territory, and Hong Kong and you know, Taiwan and the whole groupings of people. But everything's all mixed up. You know, in South America's all mixed up, in Canada and North America. Europe is all mixed up. Now the white Christians, they're going to try and make America great again. That's Donald Trump and his 63 million Christians. Can't see the timer on this. I was going to look at it. Oh yeah, I'm 25 minutes. It's good, because I usually go for an hour, and I'm probably going to do that this time. And I'm hoping for sure that you're hearing me. I got my little mic plugged in, and I got this thing, and I'm in the shade, and I should be all right. So this thing goes on and on and on. It's the same thing that goes on and on and on, is that these stimulants, let's just take one group. Let's say any group. It could be in France. It could have been an American Indian, or it could have been in Africa. But because it happened, let's take the Roman Empire. That's always a good one. Or Greece. You know, any of you historians, you know they're a bunch of monsters, a bunch of murder and killing monsters. And if you look at their diet and how much of these stimulants they're consuming, without a clue, not one person ever would attribute all this mass murder to coffee and wheat and sugar and milk and honey. You know, they just never, ever. Well, that's what it is. That's what it is. It takes your instincts and exaggerates them. But we don't know that, because it's all we've ever known. Now, when we're brand new little babies on the mother's tit, just like a calf on a cow or a deer and a whale, and they're getting this really potent mother's milk that's really just loaded with carbohydrates and loaded with fat to get them babies growing so that they can live and prosper and survive and get all the way grown so that they can end up replenishing their species. And that's nature's perfect plan. But as they wean off, then they go into the mature diet of the adolescents and the grown-ups, and which is nature's natural foods out here. But in our world, we put them back, give them cow's milk now, and then we got pablum wheat all ground up, and we got pablum, and we got applesauce, and we're feeding them all these sugars and carbohydrates. So that's all we've ever known. And as it happens in the world commerce and world trade, you know, gold is a big commodity, but and diamonds and all that stuff, and steel and everything else, but food. And the food stuffs, I think you hear them call it sometimes. Well, that's corn and wheat and oats and rice and beans and the whole array of grains and fruits and vegetables, and they're all marketed, mass marketed, globally. And so these 7.5 billion people now, you shut down these farmers shipping goods. And we're in trouble fast. You know, in 1929 we had that depression, and they ate all the goats. This is in America here now. In the Rocky Mountains, run all the way from up into Canada and all the way down almost to Mexico, and different ranges and regions of that. But that whole mountain range, the Rocky Mountain goats, they just about wiped them out just for something to eat, and that's when there were just a peddling amount of people, and there was all kinds of wild game and deer and fish and just an endless amount, and space to live it in, and the people knew how to do it, because that's how you lived. You know, if you were going to eat, and you were going to eat, because that's just like you're going to sleep. Yeah, that's just one of your instincts. So you learn how to get food. You put a baby out here on the ground right now, and he go to crawling and putting everything in their mouth to see if they want to eat it or not, and we're hovering along behind them, and because that's our nature, you know, the plant life, and everything that's out there we eat, and animals and eggs and birds and worms and insects and rabbits and squirrels, and there isn't anything we don't eat. And all the fishes and things in the waters, and that's all well and good. That'd be nature's food. But how many of us are eating any of that right now? None, zero. 7.5 billion people are not eating that. Now we are eating a few fish from the oceans, and somebody shoots a deer somewhere once in a while. But if you look at that 365 days, what that group of people are eating, and you're going to find all these hybrid plant life, and domesticated chickens, and domesticated cows and pigs and turkeys, and farm-raised fish now, and along with all the sugars and the carbohydrates and the caffeine and the alcohol and the nicotine. And this is before this last century here. In this last century, we get to add cocaine. Now, cocaine was here, and the Aztecs had it, but they'd chew a leaf, and then they would take some acidic type lime, lemon or something, and the two of them would break it down, and they would get a high on that. We synthesized, or however you call that, and you know, we got big bags of cocaine. You know, they said O.J. Simpson had big blocks of amphetamines and cocaine. Somebody come in, just shave a bunch off, you know, and you get all high. Look how crazy he got, you know, and not knowing it, nobody putting it up to the stimulants, you know. I got a picture posted today of Adolf Hitler with about, I don't know, 10,000 helmets all standing at attention, just like the British Queen and her armies, you know. And that's amphetamines. So what we need to realize is all these common stimulants I'm talking about, the potatoes, the corn, the wheat, the sugar, the alcohol, the caffeine, the nicotine, all these ones we've had for thousands of years. Now we went with science and chemistry. We tapped into how to make cocaine, and we tapped into amphetamines. Amphetamines go back, and Adolf Hitler was amphetamines from end to end. And Hirohito, I believe it is, from Japan, when they attacked Pearl Harbor, and his whole armies and stuff were methamphetamines. He thought he was God. Hitler thought he was God. And the superiority and the brainwashing. And the brainwashing, they'll just kill everybody, and pretty soon everybody's just right there doing everything they want done. They're doing it, and they're doing it their way, and you can't fake it, see. That's the whole core to Stockholm Syndrome. You can't fake that. And because the people are so high on these stimulants to start with, that they can really read into you, you know. So you're just, and you got to be genuine. So they genuinely flip-flop and become, well, that's what we are now. And then generation after generation after generation after generation, you do a few hundred generations of that. That's where we got to today. Okay, so I'm the only guy that knows this. That's my discovery. And when I say Nobel Prize, there's several reasons I say Nobel Prize. I say Nobel Prize for emphasis. That's the most important thing that how else, what would be a more greater way of saying this than saying I deserve every Nobel Prize there is, and every other award there is on the planet Earth, and every college degree, and every town key, and parades, a holiday, the 10 days straight, the whole planet Earth, the Tom Bonnell and his discovery. Not because I got this big wild ego, but because this discovery is that big and that large and that important and completely unknown. And if you just think about this for just a little bit, you've never heard nothing that even comes close to any of this. You know, wheat. They just, so people call me names. They call me psychopath, and they call me, a fool, and they call me some kind of an eccentric. I don't know. And all it is I discovered this thing. If I hadn't discovered this thing, I wouldn't be trying to bring this thing forward. I wouldn't know it, just like nobody else knows it. And so nobody knows it, and I don't know it, and the world don't know it, and that's the end of the story. Nobody knows what the fuck I'm talking about, and I got to stop using that kind of language. But what I'm trying to say is, if I hadn't discovered this, it remains that you would think eventually, this thing is so simple. This thing is so absolutely logically simple and explainable and visible that you can't imagine how it has not been known all these years. I mean, this just doesn't even make sense. You know, this thing is so obvious. But I guess what happened to me is I had the pieces of the puzzle. You know, the superiority thing. I married into a family of speed freaks without knowing it. They had taverns and bars and restaurants and shopping centers and millions of dollars. And my wife would get into her mother's amphetamines. Doctors prescribed them in those days. This is in the early 60s now. I got married in 62. And we had our first baby in 63. And there was zillions after World War II. Amphetamines just they didn't have no major regulations on them until up into the 70s, and they were handing that stuff out like candy. And the truck drivers, and I mean just the waitresses and just common people. You go to the docs, say, "Gee, I'm just not well. Here, try some of these." He's probably on them himself. And the people on amphetamines didn't know. Although they started finding out, there was people going wacky and crazy, and they used to call it, what happened to that certain friend? They said, oh, they put the lampshade on. And that would be a slang way of saying they went wacko behind all the pills. This is the Valley of the Dolls era. There's a movie and a book made about it. And so that's, I married. Now, I'm not condemning those people. They did not know any better. Her mother came from a farm family out in Endicott, Washington, and wonderful people. And her dad was some guy was on a motorcycle. I think he was Nez Pierce, a military guy. He was home on leave or something, and he came riding by, and she hopped on the back of that motorcycle and went to Washington, Seattle with him, and he stayed in the Coast Guard, and they were together for a few years, but and had my wife and her sister, but then they ended up separating, and her mother went to working in the restaurants, making a living for her and the kids, and got into that speed. Ended up marrying this millionaire that had all the bars and the businesses and stuff, and he gets into speed. You know, John F. Kennedy was heavy into speed. Elvis Presley was heavy into speed. Jerry Lee Lewis, I mean, it goes on and on and on. Marilyn Monroe, and I mean, half of Hollywood and half of the music world. And then and today, you know, the stimulants that makes them brighter. And Sean Penn does one in that Fast Times at Ridgemont High. All the kids are looking up to him. He's a little bit older and a little more experienced. And so they're wanting to know about speed. He's telling them it makes everything more, he says. And he pretty much leaves it there with that, you know. He doesn't do a whole finite. Okay, when you think about that, it makes everything more. And it does. But what Sean Penn didn't know, I wish he could hear this. It doesn't just make everything more. It also makes more of our instincts, of these warring instincts. You know, besides all this, everything being the music sounding really good, and the birds and the kids and the laughter and the people being really beautiful and wonderful feeling, but there's also the anger side of that, and there's also the greed and the jealousy side of that, and them dogs chasing after that bone. Now, everything's being more, and that's where this instinct of territory, and that's how the British became such monsters, and the Roman Empire before them, and the Egyptians and the Aztecs and the Maya and all the rest of them. That before amphetamines and before cocaine and methamphetamines and Viagra, another player in there now, in a little bit of a different realm, but in the same school of stimulants. And God, it's just insane. It's just insane. And to think that how come I'm one guy? So I knew about I started out saying how I knew about the exaggerates. Boy, her ma, I mean, she was so strong-willed and so starstruck, and didn't have a clue. You know, and I mean, John F. Kennedy was starstruck, but he was a star. Marilyn Monroe was starstruck, but she was a star. Well, my mother-in-law was a star of the tavern. And boy, every guy in there was just crazy about her, and she's playing them all, you know. And she's not delivering to too many, but she likes to keep them chasing, and she likes to be chased. And so these are instincts. Now, if it was just all the fun part of that thing, that'd be great. But there's also, you know, she ended up drinking 2 quarts of vodka a day, just shit-faced and sick, and little babies crying. And I went to her doctor, and as it happened, he wasn't in that day. And I tried to get us some help. I said, Jesus, she's nuts. You know, going to all these pharmacies and spending hundreds of dollars buying everything they got in there so they'll keep giving her prescriptions. And she's got money to burn, genuinely. But she's nuts, and just the little babies are having, you know, I mean, just bad, and they just chastised me for in there saying something bad about doctor prescribing her amphetamines. Well, chances are him and that doctor and all the nurses and the staff and the secretaries and everybody else. I mean, I'm not so loony here that I think everybody in the world was on it, but a hell of a lot of people were. And in the medical profession, it was just across the board. In Hollywood, it was just across the board. And in truck drivers, it was just across the board. And in musicians, it was across the board. I'm going to say 50%. And that's a lot. You know, 10,000, 5,000 are drug addicts that don't know it. Excuse me. So that's my discovery. And now I end up, I get ALS. Just last year I went to, I was in the potato harvest in my potato truck, and I knew I was in trouble. I couldn't turn my ignition key on my car, and that had started several months, actually into the winter before, and I was having Charlie horses. Oh man, they were bad. And everybody said, dehydration, drink more fluid, so I did. And then my hand, I couldn't get my ignition to turn in it, and so we're thinking arthritis and rheumatism and carpal tunnel, and you know, no, ALS isn't even considered in the slightest. But I am getting weaker and weaker last year, and it sounds funny, but I thought I was going to die in a potato field. My strength was down, my fingers weren't working, my stomach was giving me big trouble. That was another thing I had, hiatal hernia or something like that. So, I would have had, 10 more years or something to keep pitching this thing, but really every day, every hour, every moment that is lost is huge. Because let's say I was going to live to another 10 years. Well, 10 years is too far away, even if I had lived. I mean, we need this thing now to be understood, and so we can stop Donald Trump, and we can stop. These migrations are crazy. We're just feeding the animal that's going to eat us alive. Now, as it happens, the Brexit and Trump are right about that. And separating families and children, and their theory of they won't come. If we can stop them from coming, they don't got to be separated from their children. Problem is this global economy and this global food chain, and there's 30-40 million people in Mexico City, and they're scattered all out, and we lost our ability because of the ships bringing all the rice and all the corn and potatoes and marketing and trading. Then the drugs, Jesus, how many people are on drugs, and how many people are selling those drugs? It's ruining both peoples. And so you combine, we don't have the time, and it's all coming to bear. This little demonstration they're having in London right now over Trump. I guess he went to Scotland now in this last phase of his trip there, and then it's Putin on Tuesday, I think. And, making America great again. And Brexit, London going to be great again. And boy, America and London, we're just shoulder to shoulder on everything. We wonderful white people. And I'll get back to that again. How come I'm attacking my own race, my own people? Well, here's one way I will describe this. If I had a son or a friend that did awful things. I mean, I won't even describe what the awful things are, but I'm talking awful things that, you know, whether they were, you know, just the horrible atrocities that some really disturbed, sick people do. If I got a son or a friend, the way I describe it is and they're that sick that they're just affecting all kinds of little children's lives and families. It's just horrendous what they're doing to those. Well, we're going to go hunting or fishing, me and that friend or me and that son, and the two of us, and there's only one of us coming home. Now that's a pretty awful thing to say, but I'm using it for emphasis. That just because I'm white doesn't mean it's okay that we murdered all these people and that we keep murdering all these people. See, all these white supremacists, they just want to, you know, the Ku Klux Klan and that whole mentality. They want to wrap this whole thing up, put us back in control again, and it's damn near like Adolf Hitler. But they thinking that's okay because they know we're losing ground. See, that's what's happening in England there, in London. They know they're losing ground big time. I mean, how many million of these Somalis that hate us and these Muslims that hate us can there be? You know, and of course, then on the left, there's the Democrat, and they're trying to be good to everybody. And so they're demonstrating. That's half of them demonstrations in London right now, is the women wanting the babies to not be separated, you see? And everything is so too simplistic there. And so that's why the people on the right, these white supremacists, they scoff at them people. They say, how stupid can they be? And of course, they're the ones, they deem everybody on the left as a bunch of baby murdered and abortionists, horrible, commie, you know, just libs and leftists and just the most horrible people Earth ever known. And I am not for either one of them groups because they are all pure shit. The right-wing Christian top to bottom is just pure shit. It always has been and it always will be. And they think they're so holy and they think they're so good and they think they're so great that the whole world should be like them. That's what's going on in London, England right now today. It's all right there in living color. And I got a bunch of it posted on my website there. If you can't see through that, and these are the people that are going to murder everybody, or make them like them, and with them in control. They get to do all the banking and the insurance and the investments, and look at that castles, for Christ's sake. And then it's in the trickle down. See, they're on this trickle down theory thing. And I can tell you for a fact that everybody's brainwashed into this British Stockholm syndrome, and to whatever extent that is. But even with that factored in, I can tell you the blacks and the Mexicans and the American Indians and the Indians and the Asians, and they don't want it. They don't want this supremacy. And because of the 5 billion we've recently added, the numbers and the food supply and the energy supply, it's all in commerce. It's all in a circle. The money's going around and around and trickling off, and the food's going all around and trickling off, and the energies are going around and trickling off, and presumably like with no end in sight, you know. And then Trump wants to build more Taj Mahals, and the British want to have more stables and Wimbledon tennis matches, and everybody's playing football now. They got the, you know, not the American football, but the British football, where you kick that ball all around the field there, you know. And boy, what a wonderful life, everybody being just like them. I watched that in Taiwan, those boys, they kept saying it over and over and over in that cave. And all that whole rescue operation, top to bottom. Now, they did have world participation, and it was a Brit that popped his head up and found them there. And amongst everybody, he happened to be the one that was in that area, and he got to be the discoverer, and it was a great, wonderful thing getting all those kids out of there. But what I'm seeing as this is all occurring is I'm seeing all these ambulances and all these jeeps and all these people and all the clothes and the governors and the families, and where's the Taiwanese? These are British, you know. The whole thing, they do speak a different language, but you know, this parliaments and governments and commonwealths and this whole and then the Christianity flips in there, and Catholic and this whole thing, that's not those native people's world and life. That's what they had to become. Just like the Venezuelans had to become what they are, and the American Indian, you know, everybody's driving cars and speaking English, and half of them or more are going to church, and everybody caught up in this thing because we got no choice, and I don't have the solutions at all. The solutions to make it, but if we take the knowledge of what I'm saying here, that it's all exaggerated bullshit, and we're going for more and more and more and more, and the kids are all messed up, and you know, these kids that are in this white cocoon, you know, they're doing great. They got it all. Their families got the businesses, and they got the bank accounts, and they got the new cars, and they just groom their kids right on along there, you know, and they want everything more and more and more laws and more rules, and pretty soon we'll just get everything back and get everything under control again. And there's 5 billion people that have been added that are all saying no. And they're walking the walk and talking the talk, and they're stroking the stroke now to just buy and buy. They don't know what the hell they're doing either, because all 7.5 billion of us are on these stimulants and don't know it. And I'm talking the foodstuffs and the drinks and pops, and you know, Melinda Gates, she's over and trying to get in the medicines and the shots, inoculations, or however you say it, into all of the world, you know, to help from all these disease. And the logistics are really difficult. They can't get to all these mountainous and jungles and islands, and she said, but as they studied and you know, and have all their meetings and figure out their strategies to how they can accomplish their goals, everywhere they go, there's Coca-Cola. So they're seeing it as a logistics. I'm seeing two things there. I'm seeing a bunch of people addicted to Coca-Cola. And I could go to town here if there was no Coca-Cola in the next town over, but I could go to town here. I could walk to that next town or pull a wagon, and they'd be there to greet me, boy, and just to buying up that Coca-Cola and trading all their golden watches and money and to get that Coca-Cola, because they're addicted to the sugar and the corn syrup and the caffeine and that ice cold drink. But they'll drink it warm if they have to get the sugar and the caffeine. Okay, so she's seeing the logistics, but I'm picking up on what she's saying, that they were nowhere where there was not Coca-Cola. So that is not made out there in the jungle. That thing is bottled and canned and shipped from I don't care, Argentina and the United States and all the different countries all around, and all the different bottling and manufacturing and processing plants. And that's the world markets that we're living in. Our food is the same way. Our corn and wheat and potatoes and everything. And alcohol and nicotine is all marketed and shoved around that way. I thought that was my granddaughter, but it wasn't. There's the neighbor kid and his girlfriend. He's the guy, I left my phone in my cart one day at the grocery store, and he's one of the kids that does the carts, and he got my phone and he turned it into the lost and found, and I went back in and he said lost and found, and there it was. So he always said, I got your phone. I said, yep, I'm really glad you were honest and didn't keep my phone. But now I see him, he's walking up and down the street, and he's got this prettiest little gal friend you ever saw, and she's real dark skinned. I don't know what grouping she is with. Long straight hair. Looks like she's going home alone, right on the corner here. And he's going the other way with his backpack, and she's going the other way with her backpack, and they've been hanging out all day. Reminded me of me and my wife. I was I was 16 and she was 15. That's about what these kids are here. And then a year later, I was 17 and she was 16. We got married. So it's really serious romance going on there. She's a skinny little gal like my wife was. He's kind of a husky, average white guy. So she must live down there somewhere. I don't know just where. She must probably lives down in the trailer court down in one of these places over there. There's about 40 trailers kitty corner from me here. I used to live over there. And I saw him. I was down there swimming a little while ago, and they were there, and I always say hello. But I never knew he lived out around here. But I don't know. Maybe he's headed towards town. Maybe he walked all the way from town to see her, and she's the one that lives here. That could be too. I used to walk to see my wife 7-8 miles each way, and I'd walk it about 5 times a week. And her mom and dad was running that tavern. They were gone all the time. But I'd have to get out of there when they come home in the middle of the night, like 2 o'clock in the morning or something. And then I'd walk all the way home 7-8 miles. And then that night or the next night or several times a week. And her and I, and then we ended up, of course, we got pregnant together. And but we were just crazy about each other, and it was wonderful. And we had a beautiful baby. But that's the love life that goes on. But all that goofiness and insanity and pills and stimulants and there's the cultural within the society that we were kind of scrambled eggs, is the best way of saying it. And everybody trying to find, and some make it and some don't. We made it to this point. We made it to the 1.5 billion people. We made it to the 2.5 billion people. Now we've made it to the 7.5 billion people. And with, like I'm saying, the added amphetamines and methamphetamines and cocaine and Viagra now on top of all the coffee and alcohol and caffeine and nicotine and sugar and hybrid carbohydrates and wheat, milk, juice, and honey. So now you got all that with 7.5 billion people, and an economy that is geared for shipping and transporting and marketing and selling and buying. And if that thing was to never be upset, let's say we could go to 15 billion. Let's say we could go to 60 billion. If it never got upset, and this worrying instincts and these greed, and people don't want to be ruled. You know, the Jews eventually got themselves freed, and the African slaves. And some will say, well, they freed them. Well, the time reached where public sentiment and whatnot is just not going to have it. In our inner selves, just like we are these exaggerated instincts and stuff, but our inner selves are still humane. You know, if we can be, if we could be. And unless we become just pure pathological, which happens a lot. But little red car, it's little Averos or something, I think. He gets about 40 miles to the gallon. That's a brand new, probably 2018 or something, roller skate. And I've been running them roller skates for 15 years. And they've been around for almost 30 years. See, 88, 98, 08, 18. They've been around for 30 years. And 40 miles to the gallon. I paid $800 for mine. And I've been driving it for 3-4 years, and they're just unbelievable. That's the other thing that's exaggerate. See, everything is big fancy cars, big fancy houses, big fancy clothes, big fancy shoes. This is back to this British capitalism, democracy, more, me, shine, and ballerinas and parades and bands and all of this more, shine. Do, get, see me. Those are all natural instincts, you know, when the ducks are finding their mate and their mate's finding them, and the children are growing up. But there's nothing that we're doing is you know, we got 1 billion cars out there. It's not sustainable. You know, and I'm not the guy that I used to have an uncle. He was always saying, you know, oh boy, this depression is going to all happen. I used to kind of scoff and laugh at him. He's always, you know, something was going to happen. And he was seeing, and he was kind of a goofo, that one uncle I'm talking about. But he had plenty of friends that would talk that with him in that age generation there. And I'm talking to people that were born in 20s. And 1910, 1920, 1930, and before that. So the older people, because they're seeing what happens. You get with age, you get the perspective. You know, we're living to be 80, 82, but boy, if you look at the health. I sit out here in front of my it's a big grocery store, Central Market they call it, and then I'll sit on the bench there once in a while, or I'll sit in my car when I come out. Whatever I happen to do, I'm waiting for a phone call or something, and the people coming in and out. And the Walmarts, they got a little bench there. I'll sit on that once in a while. But I'm seeing my grandma, Daisy Bunnell. She was a people watcher, and I never really paid any attention to it. But as I got older, I can see what she was doing. She just enjoyed life, and in the process of that, you know, you see all the healthy, wonderful goings on. Just like I was talking about, this 2 kids here in love, you know, and some were walking a dog, but the sickness of a lot of old people, and you're not seeing health. You're not seeing health in any sense of the word. You're seeing old, sickly people. So yeah, we're 82, but we'd be better off. I'm not going to say we'd be better off dead, but I'm saying that our health is not. So we're fooling us into thinking everything about this whole medicine, and we're making people live forever. We're killing people, and we got people dying. And we got mental issues and depression, and you know, they're labeling everybody bipolar and putting them on meds and this kind of medicine, that kind of medicine. It's just ludicrous. So our health, I'm going to say 75% of the population, 25% do okay, and could say 10 or 15% do well. But there's so many don't, you know, and they'll say, well, they just need to be more moderate. They shouldn't drink as much. They wouldn't have those problems. Well, in a perfect world, there wouldn't be no alcohol. Nobody would be drinking any of it. And nobody would be these superior Christians and caffeine and sugar. And I don't know, it's just it's a losing battle. But what I'm getting at is if this discovery should be known, I mean, it could go to the grave with me and blow out of YouTube and never be heard again, and so be it. But I'm going to try. And I see real significance in realizing that we don't need all this war, and we don't need all this wealth, and we don't need, and I'm not talking they dump this Marxist thing on you or something, you know. I'm not talking nothing like that. I'm just saying that this whole palace and this whole superiority that comes with all this governing and all this, it's no good. It's not, man was not meant to live this way. And if we were so well, sure, you look at all them big new vehicles these people are driving, all them big new houses, and oh boy, they're just in their shoes and their clothes. And I remember George Hamilton, he was one of the actors when I was just young there in the early 60s. And he had this pretty gal friend, I can't remember her name now. But he did a play, and the British have got quite an interesting take on life. It's worth listening to. And I think these were kind of probably, George Hamilton might have even been English, I don't know. But the movie, part of the scene in the movie is he's got his shoes and his coat and his tie and his briefcase, and he's got, everything is brand name, you know, the Florsheim shoes and the something or another shirt and the cufflinks and the watch and Rolex and this brief, you know, and then he's just Mr. Perfect. I saw Carly Simon the other day. She was talking about, I didn't see her live, of course. I saw her on YouTube. She's talking about the You're So Vain. I've got her songs posted on my website right now. That was always one of my favorites. I did boom, 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 boom. And just a great song. And she said she didn't realize she was actually living that life herself. Now that's a complete different twist on who's the guy that was so vain and all that. She said, I was living that life. You know, flew to Nova Scotia to see the total eclipse to the sun and all this greatness and luxury and all these fine jewels and linens. And she said, I was living that. And I didn't know it. And that's the truth. There's a lot of that going on. And that whole king-queen thing is that, of course. And this whole 63 million, you know, they think they go to church and they're shined up. They get all cleaned up and polished and go to church, you know. And they sing and hymn and tell each other how great they are, you know. And then they share and take offerings for missionaries and send them off and all this. They're just greatness there. They're just reeking in all this love and caring. They're just such great and wonderful people, you know. And don't realize they're just feeding their egos. They're just feeding, stroking their egos from the word go, you know, and supporting these murderous armies. They're heroes, they call them. Yeah. Go kill for them, then you're a hero. That's what it's always been. The whole British thing there, you know, they name the whole territory after you, and so all the other ones seeing that, they want to be generals too, you know. So that's that whole big pile of shit. I'm going to cut off here, and hopefully this thing registered in another tape. Tom Buddell saying the same thing. But I'm wishing and hoping I could get heard. I believe it's a validest, most important message that has ever been known. Because it's not just going on, it's from dope. You know, if we were to say 7.5 billion people are all on amphetamines, and they're going nuts. They're out there making war and kingdoms, and they're all so great, and they're stars, and, you know, they're on amphetamines. They're stimulated out of their minds. Well, that's what it is. That's what the sugars and the carbohydrates and the caffeine and the nicotine and the alcohol and that whole array of fruit and vegetables and grains. So thank you again, and adios and goodbye, my friend.